Yeah, mate, but it's
Get ready for the world's greatest Arsenal podcast.
got my laptop charging.
Welcome to another podcast by Guns and Yellow Ribbons. Enjoy the show.
Can you hear me, boys?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Guns and Yellow Ribbons. My name is Fergus. I'm your host. Sorry, I've got multiple audio going on here. I've changed my office around a little bit and I've got two screens and one of the screens is my ear a couple of seconds later. I'm going to get rid of that. Now I can hear myself. Guys, I think my technology's got a little bit worse than Big Tony's at this rate. We've got in the green room 7 Big Tonys, but we can't hear any of them. Owen, us Irish guys... By the looks of it, how are you doing, Owen?
How am I doing in terms of Arsenal, or how am I doing in terms of real life?
Real life, I suppose, at the moment.
Real life, great. Everything's going swell, but on the Arsenal front, I'd say it's funny how quickly things can turn because it's anything but swell at the minute. But I'm looking forward to diving into it.
And back after a few weeks. It's a few weeks or a few months. Dan Potts.
Can't even remember, mate, but it's a pleasure to be back on either way. I just love the audio issues and the technical problems already. I mean, it's just nice to have Trev nowhere near us and we're still having problems. Do you know what I mean? So it's always one. It doesn't matter whether it's Trev, whether it's Kenny Ken, whether it's Tony. There's always one of us, man. But I'm good, Fergus. Good to be back, man.
And the thing is, what I'm like a stickler for, like having it all working right as well. So this is
that's
really
why
going to get annoying.
That's why it makes it even funnier because you're a perfectionist, bro, and it's just funny when this stuff like this happens.
Oh no, it's driving me nuts. Listen, before we start this show, and hopefully Tony can get himself sorted out. If not, well, it'll just be the three of us for a short while. I thought it was really important to mention Rocky Rocastle. It's 21 years since we lost Rocky. I was not fortunate enough to see the guy play live, but Owen or Potsy, probably a little bit you would have been young at that point.
Very young.
You seen him
play? I was very young, very, very young, and I probably did see him play when I was very young, but not for Arsenal. If I'm honest, he was probably at Man City or Leeds or somewhere else when he was playing. But I was very young, so all I'd remember is looking back in history and seeing what a fantastic guy the guy was. And I think in 89, he was a massive part of what we did then. I remember him scoring one of the best goals I've seen against Manchester United. And I think when you look at that goal that he scored where he chipped Schmeichel, not only did he chip Schmeichel, he's managed to get it past two of the best centre midfielders that the league has ever seen in Paul Ince and Brian Robson. And for me, that's why that goal is so special and it just sums up Rocky, So very, very sad. And it still is really sad when you talk about it. It's strange, that far on, and people still get upset when they talk about it. Just shows what a legend the guy was.
Owen, first of all, did you ever see Schmeichel ever play? And also, what about Rocky? Did you see Rocky either? I always thought it was Schmeichel myself.
Yeah. Schmeichel plenty of times. But to be honest with you, Rocky, not really. I don't really have very many memories of Rocky playing for the Arsenal, but what I do have memories of is my dad talking about Rocky. Obviously, the pictures we see on the anniversaries and stuff like that on social media. But for me, my big real introduction to Rocky was through Ryan, Rocky's son, who's been a guest on our podcast numerous times, and I think Dan has met him as well on the podcast and stuff. And to be honest with you, it was only through. And do you want to know what? I'm quite happy it worked out this way because I got to meet Ryan with no sort of preconception of how he should be because of his dad. As I say, I was quite sheltered to maybe his dad's legacy, and it was only through Ryan that I really started to dive into that there. But above all else, apart from the fact that, look, everybody knows the technical skill that David Rocastle had on a football pitch, but I think the one thing that you hear everybody say is how much of a gentleman that he was. He was not only a legend on the football pitch, but off it as well. And I think something that he would be proud of is maybe the legacy that he's left, because his children, not only Ryan, but his sister as well, are two absolute legends of human beings as well. And I'm glad to call Ryan a friend now. So Yeah, no, it does.
Well,
I think every year it hits deep now that you have that personal connection too.
I was with you in the Tolly
Mhm.
the last time you were over when you met Ryan. Tony, I don't know if we've have we got you, have we not? Have you got Trevor's Gremlins? Because obviously Trevor hasn't made it tonight because he's got something going on at home. So you've obviously borrowed his broadband. How are you getting on, Tony? Can you talk to us? That's a no. Okay, so let's let's look at this game next. We're looking at the Arsenal visit to Selhurst Park. It was 8 o'clock on a Monday evening kickoff, and it was what we would have thought probably. Well, every game's a must-win game, but it was a game that we went in there thinking like, after the weekend and clearly Spurs had clawed some goals back against us in the Premier League, and goal difference may be very, very important in this run into the league. Is he back? No, he's not. Goal difference might be very important in the run into the top 4, top 3 position. So going into this game, Owen, what was your expectations leading up to it? Go on.
I think that people were potentially overlooking this game from the get-go. The work that Patrick Vieira has been doing with Crystal Palace and how formidable he's turned them into. I know that sometimes the results don't sway their way, but their performances have definitely taken a step up since his appointment. But for me, look, I always thought, probably like everybody else, that we had everything in our arsenal to go out and put them away. But from the opening few minutes, I think that the thing that stood out to me was the fact that we looked like the side that were really feeling the nerves. We looked like we were feeling the occasion and the pressure. Obviously, there was a couple of changes with Kieran Tierney falling out of the lineup, which I'm sure we can dive into a bit later on. But minimal changes. Probably that would be the team under the circumstances that everybody would have put out. But the difference was just the contrast between the two sides was just stark. It was insane. They looked like the team that were potentially fighting to get in the Champions League places, and we looked like the mid-table side. And potentially you could almost say the Crystal Palace essentially are on the beach because they're pretty much safe as far as more, and they're not really going to climb into any European places. So they didn't really have much to go for in this game, where it was the complete opposite for us. But I tell you what, Patrick Vieira got it absolutely spot on, because if you pay attention to the way that they pressed, and as I mentioned, I don't want to throw too much in too early, but the thing that stood out to me very, very early on is they recognised our points of control and supply, and they completely nullified them with triggered presses. Anytime that Ben White, Thomas Partey or Martin Odegaard touched that ball, there was 2 or 3 men on top of them straight away, and it just completely nullified, as I say, our control and our supply throughout the game, which completely starved us of anything.
Dan, you asked me, was I going to the Palace game? And I did get offered a ticket there, thanks to Trev. And I chose, due to an early start on Tuesday morning, and 2, the fact that it's such a pig of a place to get home from. Even I'm on the underground and you're further out in Essex. It's a pig of a place. You went to the game. You had an early start as well. You had the day off, and it was an early start in Waterloo. What was your expectations going into that game? And then let's look at the lineups as well, because as Owen mentioned, there was an injury to KT and Tomiyasu wasn't available.
Yeah, I didn't see the lineup coming, if I'm honest. I didn't see the Tierney situation.
Was that due to the early start, or was that due to the...
Yeah, a little bit of both. But I did worry. I think Kieran Tierney's one of my favourite players, and I was very frustrated that I didn't see him. The other shock to the lineup was I really expected to see Martinelli, because I think that we needed somebody who give us a little bit of that energy and was that off-the-shoulder type player. So they were the 2 shocks for me. Other than that, pretty much as Owen said, I expected it. I think we need to start giving Patrick Vieira some credit, don't we? I mean, we need to start understanding what a job this guy's done. He came into the club with 7 players at his selection, and he has recruited unbelievably well. He's hit the ground running, not just himself, but with all of those players. He's got in 2 months, I could see a style of play, not 2 years like Mikel Arteta I was waiting for. And then also what I've seen is not just the philosophy of that play, that style of play. It's the fact that there just seems to be that intensity and that want to win. There's that kind of drive and that tenacity. So I love what I'm seeing. I think he deserves a hell of a lot of credit. I think Mark Gahey and Tariq Mitchell have got into the England squad rightly so, as well as Conor Gallagher. They're three brilliant players for Crystal Palace. Didn't even see Michael Elise, and he's another player that's been superb for them this season. He's kept Zaha happy. Zaha's not asked to leave yet, and he has been for the last 3 years under Roy Hodgson and De Boer or whoever it was beforehand. So I think Patrick Vieira deserves a lot of credit. So my expectations going into this one was it was going to be a narrow win to the Arsenal, and it was going to be a very hard fought out game. And like Owen says, Patrick Vieira schooled us in certain areas of that pitch. And I just think he deserves a lot of credit, not just for this game, but for the whole season. So I don't sit there being shocked by this, because I think that we're an Arsenal side that has a performance like this in us. We've seen it at Everton away, we saw it at Burnley at home, and we saw it at the start of the season. So I'm not shocked that Crystal Palace beat us. I'm more shocked by the kind of performance, really, because I can't really name a player that played well. So there's my expectations going into the game and the shock to the lineup.
Well, the lineup was Ramsdale, Cedric, White, Gabriel, and Tavares. We'll go into him in a second. We had Partey, also somebody we'll talk about, Granit Xhaka, Saka, Odegaard, Smith Rowe, and Lacazette. The bench was the biggest surprise for myself. That there was, okay, it's great to see youth coming through, but it just shows the lack of depth and strength that the team has got and how much work we need to do in the summer. You touched on a few things that I do want to talk about a little bit later on, which is a debate about Arteta versus Vieira. And you know what? There's some of the stuff you said there, Dan, about Vieira is very becoming of the man as a player he was. He was a much more sturdy, stronger player. Where Vieira was, where Arteta was very much more maybe the gentleman professor-y sort of esque type player, for the want of better word. So, the style of management and the style of the way they manage their teams are clearly to do with their personality as well. Looking at the performance we touched on, I mentioned we'd talk on Partey. Partey, Gallagher, every single time he got the ball was on Partey every second. Partey couldn't pass water on the evening because I don't think he was given any time. I think the press on the ball was unreal. And you know, we type of saw the Partey of old. There's talk about him coming back from international duty. At least the Ghanaian game was important and it got them through to the World Cup, unlike the Kieran Tierney pointless friendly, and really annoys me about international football. But he's come back nursing an injury, which later he was taken off from. What did you think of that Partey and the way Vieira and Gallagher himself as a player pressed on Partey? And did that stop the whole Arsenal sort of ticking?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's, as I mentioned before, there's certain players in our team that set the tempo of the game, orchestrators, if you will, and it's Ben White, Thomas Partey, and Martin Odegaard. And for me, even though Conor Gallagher was relentless, and look, Chelsea or not, he's an absolutely unbelievable player with a massive future ahead of him. And even though he was fantastic during the game, there's still things that you can control as a player. Your passing technique, for example, and Thomas Partey seemed to lack that from the start. And it goes back to, there's an old saying in football that your first touch is the most important. And for me, Thomas Partey is one of those players that his first touch has to be good to set him up for the rest of the game. And unfortunately, it wasn't. And unfortunately, that pressure started to pay off for Crystal Palace and Gallagher on Thomas Partey, because he just, every time he touched the ball, he was completely baffled. He was completely paranoid about being caught on the ball. And it paid dividends for them, that hard work. But what I will say is that I think that when the commentary team on Sky Sports mentioned the fact that Jordan Ayew was also on international duty with Ghana, but I think that the job that Thomas Partey does for his international side is massive. He is absolutely everywhere on the pitch if you watch him. He's basically a one-man midfield for Ghana. So I think that to completely ignore the fact that he did have such a big game and such a big performance for his country in such short time before that game, that you would be naive to think that wouldn't have an effect. But still, Thomas Partey, I think, has set a standard for himself. Over this past few months, he's been arguably Arsenal's best player, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but now you talk about potential injury that he picked up during that game, and even though his performance was subpar in that performance, he's still going to be an absolutely massive miss, because I think that an out of form Thomas Partey is still probably our best central midfielder at the club.
Mm. Dan, Thomas Partey clearly was managed out of the game. Did that affect Martin Odegaard? I know Owen just said that Partey is probably our best player of recent in Arsenal. To be honest, I'd probably put Odegaard up there as probably one of our best and most improved players of recent time. Do you think that cutting Partey out of the game influenced and affected Odegaard's game? And there's a lot of people on social media. You know what social media is like. There's so many people who have such extreme views and how they slag off players on social media. And on Arsenal Fans Forum and also on Twitter and so on, people are going, Odegaard's having a mare, he's awful, and what's he doing? I think he was just frustrated. He was frustrated with what was coming from behind him. And I think he was also frustrated what was on front of him, with Lacazette as well. What were your thoughts? Sorry.
I like what you did there, man. I like what you did there. So the reason Martin Odegaard struggled was because you've just said Thomas Partey was taken out of the game, but it wasn't because he was taken out of the game by one person. Like Owen said, Conor Gallagher, Coyote, and Schlupp were like dogs, mate. Absolute, did not stop running, workhorses on every touch. Martin Odegaard's first touch was shambolic. I mean, absolutely shambolic, particularly in the first half. Thomas Partey couldn't get a pass right. And I just think, as you said, Fergus, both of them were getting frustrated. And it was funny because somebody asked me not long ago, just before the Palace game, who's been our best player in 2022? And I said Thomas Partey. And I think Thomas Partey has allowed Odegaard to be the player that he is. So sometimes when you look at what Odegaard's doing, you look around and think he wouldn't be doing as good if it wasn't for Thomas Partey. And I think that was an example of Monday night, that Thomas Partey just couldn't get onto the ball and do what he was doing in the previous games. And Martin Odegaard was drowned out of the game as well due to the quality of the other three that Palace had in midfield. I said in 2021 that Gabriel was our best player. In 2022, Partey was our best player. And they were the two worst players on the night for me. On Monday night, I thought Gabriel was shocking. I thought Partey was poor. Everyone was giving, obviously, I'm sure we'll mention our left back a lot of stick. I thought Gabriel was much more to blame for both the goals. But as for Thomas Partey and Odegaard...
Do you not think that the reason Gabriel was poor is because Nuno Tavares was not at the races? Cedric had a poor first half, and I think that put Ben White under pressure. So having both the left and right backs having not good days at the office, I think that put an extra pressure on top of the centre halves. And even with the very first kick of the ball, I'm not sure if Ramsdale was 100% ready for this game, because with the very first attack, Ramsdale looked a little bit nervy and shaky. So the whole goalkeeper and the two centre halves were a bit shaky, and then they got even shakier on the outside. Do you not think that probably just messed with them?
I think you're right, and I think it comes to having a young side. Because if you take it back to an experience, let's take it back to the greats of Arsenal. Let's take it back to Sol Campbell. When Gail Clichy comes in, what does Sol Campbell do? Don't worry, Gail, I got you. Yeah? Don't worry, I got you. We can't do that. Gabriel's a kid as well. So Gabriel hasn't got anyone because he's still learning on the job as well, just like Ben White. So when Cedric comes in, who, yes, is experienced, but he's not our first choice, Gabriel and Ben White, I've got you. But they haven't, because Ben White's making rash challenges for the first goal. And Gabriel's losing the header, and Gabriel's jumping out the way of balls, missing clearances. Nuno Tavares, I thought, got a little bit of bad stick, if I'm honest, because I watched the highlights. Those two goals aren't his fault, in my opinion. I don't know what Gabriel's doing for either of those. Now, you might say that Gabriel's a little bit out of position and Nuno Tavares' position leaves a little bit wrong, and I'd agree with that. But you can't not blame Gabriel and blame it all on Nuno Tavares. I thought that was shocking from Gabriel. And listen, he's one of my favourite players, Gabriel. Along with Kieran Tierney, I think he's been exceptional for Arsenal since he's come in the door. And he's one of Arteta's first signings that I looked at and gone, wow, you are class. I really like you. But I thought he had a shambles. And people say it's because his missus give birth and his head's on other things and he's had late nights. I get that, yeah, potentially. But you've got to be ready for games like this. And international duty, as Owen said, I hate international breaks. Yeah, I do. I'm with you on that one. But I don't blame the players for giving 110% for their club, because that's what they want to do. That's what you should want to do for your club and country, is give 110%. So Thomas Partey and Kieran Tierney, although it's frustrating that both of them are now out and we could probably point the finger towards international duty, I don't blame the players. I blame these stupid, pointless, ridiculous friendlies. 180 minutes for Kieran Tierney. Why? Why did he need to play against Poland and Austria? And now he's out for us. So there's some problems there. And I think, the goals, Fergus, it's a young team and they're going to make mistakes. And they did on Monday
To be
night.
honest, there's a great comment by John in here. Said, in fairness, we kind of expect to hit a wall with such a small squad, which we've mentioned on before, and they've played a lot of games. And the young squad, Owen, Gabriel is coming into a little bit of criticism from Dan there, and almost letting Nuno Tavares off the hook. But to be honest, whatever about the first goal, the second goal, Tavares is totally to blame. He lost his man and stopped running.
I, to be honest with you, whereas I see what Dan is saying about Gabriel's shaky performance, and I do look, as a man in a similar position myself, I do have sympathy for Gabriel. Look, anyone who has kids know that it's okay saying to turn up on a Monday in this case and be ready to go, but it's a completely life-changing thing, especially for your first kid. And as you mentioned, he's a young lad himself, and maybe he's being more hands-on than somebody in his position normally is, but he definitely looked like a man that was feeling the effects of it. But in saying that, for the two opening goals, I think that Nuno Tavares was just completely to blame for both of them. I think that the first one, the ball comes into the box. I think he's looking for contact of Anderson. And I think that if he tries,
distracted.
I think that if he tries to make
something and it's come out loud. Sorry, Owen.
No, you're good, but I think that if Nuno actually makes a proper goal for the ball, he probably gets the foul there. But it's the fact that he winced and looked for contact, and you just don't do that. As for the second goal, he gambled on the fact that Gabriel was going to make the clearance, and as a defender, you never make the gamble. You always play the game as if the man playing beside you is an absolute plum. Always expect him to make a mistake, and you'll never go wrong. And even at that, there, after watching it back, Nuno could have done two things there. He could have either stepped up, held the line, and the Palace man would have been offside for the second goal, or he could have kept tracking Ayew and been there to intercept it when Gabriel failed. He didn't either. He went to track the man and just stopped all of a sudden, and it was absolutely criminal. And to be honest with you, after the Forest game and after this performance, I think since the Forest game, what did he come off on the 35th minute? And then this one, he didn't see the second half. I think he's played a minute of football, but I think he's played a minute of football between the Forest game and this one. I'm not sure if there's a way back for Nuno. I'm not sure at all. I think we're going to find out on Saturday. Yeah. And if you don't see Nuno start in either left back or left wing back, I think the writing's on the wall, and Mikel Arteta's mind has been made up on the player.
Arteta was questioned after the game about that, and he said it was a tactical change for attack purposes. And to be honest, I think that's just company talk. I had written down here, Nuno Tavares subbed at halftime, Forrest at 35 minutes. Is he finished for Arsenal? I think under normal circumstances he would be finished. And he might spend a year or so with the reserves or go out on loan. But I think, and we will look ahead to the Brighton game, I don't think we've got very much of a choice if Tomiyasu's not back. Before we get into that, though, Odegaard, we talked about his frustration. Odegaard, from that frustration in the second half, we changed to 6 in attack effectively for the last 15 minutes. We had only one shot on target in the first half, and Odegaard gave away a penalty. But whilst I don't argue it was a penalty, Dan, is there an argument to say that Saka in the first half should have had a penalty? And, there was no VAR, it seemed to be used. And you look at the time that the referee took to award that penalty. I was looking for, some VAR, check and see if Xhaka was involved. He wasn't involved, so VAR was clearly completed. But, what aside from the joke on that one, what did you think of the Saka claim for a penalty, which I thought was a little bit soft, and even softer was the Lacazette one. But what did you think of that overall then?
I don't really understand anymore, Fergus, if I'm honest. because I don't really know what is or isn't a penalty still now. I thought it put potentially a little bit soft, but I've seen them given. You see some of the teams at the weekends get given for a lot less than what happened with Saka, or even the Lacazette one you mentioned. I've seen stuff like that before over the years. So it's a frustrating one for me. I thought it was a penalty on Zaha. I think that was clear, to be honest. And it killed the game. I think the game was already done anyway, but it certainly killed it off at that chance. But I think it would have been very soft. There you go, Rich is in the chat. I would agree with that. I think it would have been extremely soft. I agree with that. I do. I just wanted to come back, Ferg, if I could, on the Tavares thing, or are we going to go into that?
Because no, carry on. Yeah,
I just wanted to point on that. And I know people are going to shoot me down and say that I've got an agenda and stuff. I just don't get the man management with this guy. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Because if you're a 29-year-old footballer that has been at the club for, say, 6 years, and you have a shocking performance like that, you get subbed because you know better. Yeah? When you're in the first season at a club and you're 21 years old, to not even put an arm around this lad's shoulder and just say, I've done with you, you're coming off. To do that twice, like, it's not tactics. Let's get it right. There's no tactics involved with that. He thought he was having a shit game again, so we took him off. And I just don't really understand why he can't buy a signing that is his signing, that's a young player, and try to give him a little bit of confidence, put his arm around him, say, look, this is what you're doing wrong. You're a great player. I personally don't think he's a left back anyway. I think what I've seen is a left winger. However, if he is going to be a left back because he's cover at the moment, you look at him and say, right, this is what you need to do. You're ill-disciplined, you're rash, and your positioning is off. So this is how you need to rectify this. I just don't know that enough of that's being done. Now, I'm not in training. I don't see what he's talking to him, man management wise. But from the out looking in, to just keep subbing the guy, what is that doing to him? Now, we're going to see on Saturday, aren't we, whether he's going to play him or not, see if he's got a future. But I just think it's poor management. Like, just take him off, just take him off. Like, come on, man, that's just.
But do you not reckon, Dan? Remember earlier in the season, I think it was Sambi and Nuno both had pretty shocking displays against Liverpool, and if you remember, the following week he did keep faith in both of them, if I remember right. And as you mentioned there, so that is him showing faith. But say, for example, maybe with somebody like, and I know that it's probably well documented your opinion on the use of Nicolas Pepe, but I think maybe in the same line as Nicolas Pepe, whereas he maybe has given that talk 2 or 3 times, and yet he sends him out, and Nuno is doing the complete opposite of exactly what he's being coached and told to do. And maybe the frustration is warranted at this point. When you're spending something,
Oh, and Mike Gongalves, our Boston Ozil, as he's known on this podcast, he's the guy who set up this podcast with me originally. He's over in Boston. He's Portuguese-American, and he's, whilst an Arsenal fan, he's also an avid Benfica fan and does a Benfica podcast in Portuguese as well. When we signed, and you were on the same WhatsApp group, Dan, when he signed for Arsenal at 7 million, he said, what a waste of £8 million. He said he's the worst defender he had seen. And to be honest, what I had seen him play at the Emirates, and as you said, Dan, he looked more of like, going forward, he's very strong, he's very fast, defensively he's very weak. So I don't know. Clearly the judgment is out.
Looking at that, just quick, do you think then that, like, if he's doing that and he's taking him off, why is he not doing it with other players? Because I've seen Lacazette been shocking for a few games, and I've seen him play 90 minutes each time. So what is it with this player? Maybe Owen's right. Maybe he's just not listening to Mikel Arteta. That could be the case. It could be. We don't know that. That's just us thinking it must be something, because he's not wanting to take the time with it. It just seems this manager doesn't want to give some of these players time. They're either in your good books or not. It's very odd how it's all playing out. And
to be honest, there's not many on the books that he can have good books or bad books. He's got a solid starting 11. So there is no hierarchy. And I think Lacazette, which we'll talk about, or lack of goals, as I've started calling them recently, Lacazette is a prime example. That you would actually drop him. You wouldn't play him under normal circumstances. He does an awful lot more for the team than like in the sense of he's back to goal play, and his assist rate and stuff like that is a lot better.
At the moment, is he? Not even doing that.
Yeah, I was digging deep. I was digging deep. But he's paid to be a striker. He's paid 185 grand a week to be a striker, and he's not striking. He's not scoring goals. He's meant to be our Frenchman number 9, and he's not been the number 9 at the moment.
And as well, like, looking at the Tavares thing, it's kind of Tavares epitomises the Arsenal fan base, really, in my opinion. It's like this guy, Kieran Tierney's not getting in. He's not getting in. He's brilliant. Look at this guy. He's fantastic. Tierney's never getting back in. Next minute, yeah, he needs to sub him. He's not good enough. Get a few wins, everything's going well. Get a few losses, everything's wrong. You get my point? That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So I think we just need to be a little bit calmer with this and say, right, he's had a couple of bad games. If the manager don't fancy him, there's nothing we can do. Like Nicolas Pepe, for whatever reason, he hates him. There's no point saying he's good enough. He ain't going to be good enough. He's never going to play for Arsenal long term. I think we might have to do the same with Nuno Tavares if the at the moment it's looking that way. On Saturday, it will tell us, like Owen says, because if we get to a stage where we are completely changed our formation, we've got Xhaka at left back, Saka at left back, Cedric at left back, we're going to know Tavares' future is done and he's out of here. So it's going to be interesting at the weekend.
I think if anything as well, sorry to jump in there, but I'm not saying that if Kieran Tierney was in that side that the game would have finished with an Arsenal win. That's not what I'm saying. But when you look at how shaky that entire backline, and even to an extent Emile Smith Rowe in front of Nuno, I think that with all this sort of ITKs coming out and saying that there's links with the Kieran Tierney and Spanish clubs and £50 million price tags, and people saying, oh, maybe it wouldn't be so bad to take the 50 million. We only paid 25 for him. Keep Nuno in there and then we'll look for a replacement. I think that just threw pie in everybody's face that would suggest that that's a good option to take, because Kieran Tierney, for me, in that backline, people can talk about the leadership of Ben White or Gabriel or Tommy Asu or whoever you want. That's the mainstay in the backline. That's the guy who pulls the strings back there. That's the voice of our 100%. Backline. And for me, it's going to be a massive, massive loss for the rest of the season not to have him back there.
It's a shame that Tierney is as injury prone as he is, because I get the leadership skills he's got, because I don't see Ben White as a very much a vocalist guy, and there's as much as Gabriel does try and talk and he does cajole the midfield and the back line, his language skills are probably a little bit, he gets frustrated a little bit by it. Listen, I think we've probably done that game to death. It's 5 years since we had the same result. The last time we lost 3-0 there, which was under Arsene Wenger, and it was the start at the end of his reign, and changes happened. We got the Brighton game coming up, which I'd like to briefly touch on. And then I want to talk about the thing that we touched on earlier on, which is the Arteta Vieira one as well. So the Brighton game, quickly, who do we go with left back? What's your back line, Dan?
The back line is, if Tommy Asu's fit, he comes in. Otherwise, I'd keep it the same. I would go with Nuno Tavares. I would. I don't want to see Xhaka there. Don't want to see Saka there. I don't want to see Cedric there. I see him there. He's okay at right back, but I can't see him at left back again. So you've got to go with Nuno Tavares, and you've got to give him the confidence and the belief. You are the one who signed him, so show everybody why you signed him and stick with him. Gabriel and Ben White, and then the midfield, obviously, Lokonga's going to have to come in, isn't he, if Laparty's out? But that's what I'd do.
Owen, do you do what Richard says in the chat here? Cedric will go left back, Ben White will go right back, and Holding will play centre back.
No, that's too drastic for me. I think, and funny, people might have got a different vibe from my sort of answers around Nuno, but I agree with Dan. Stick with Nuno. I think that we're scraping the barrel. I think changes the systems are bad midway through a season, let alone coming to the last 9 games of the season when it's just as important as it is. But I think that maybe when you're sending Nuno out, this is where the manager or the captain earns their stripes by pulling maybe Gabriel aside, pulling Granit Xhaka aside, some of those senior figures, and said, look, you're going to need to babysit this guy a little bit for 45 minutes just until he finds his feet again, because he's a player that's completely low on confidence, but he's a player that I think for the remainder of the season that we're really going to have to rely on.
Okay. And midfield wise, Dan, Lokonga, do you play him in that centre midfield role because Partey's going to be out, or do you change the formation slightly and drop Xhaka back into that position?
So I think what might happen, I would actually like Lokonga in that role because I actually see him as probably the only other holding midfielder that we've got. He's certainly not an attacking midfielder, that's for sure. So I probably would play him there. However, don't be surprised if you see a 4-2-3-1. And the reason I say that is because Granit Xhaka, when he's in that 4-2-3-1, it allows him to drop back into that left back position a lot more when Nuno's bombing forward. So it wouldn't surprise me if we play a little bit similar to that again and go a little bit like that while Partey and Tierney are out. But we could just go like for like and play Lokonga in the Partey role holding and then Xhaka and Ødegaard either side of the diamond with Lacazette at the tip. I would like to see something a little bit different if we're going to see another performance that we saw on Monday. So it wouldn't surprise me if Arteta changed it to a 4-2-3-1.
It's almost like you host a podcast because, you just line me up there, Lacazette at the tip. So, Owen, because I don't want Dan to answer his own question just quite yet. Lacazette at the tip. What do we do with Lacazette? Okay, we touched on his lack of goals. We've touched on his other leadership qualities and how well the youth seem to respond to him. But clearly, goals. With the 7-goal swing at the weekend, goals are going to be very, very important to us. How would you change that formation around? Do you keep Lacazette in the squad? Do you bench him? How would you line it up?
It's a really tricky one for me. So, look, the first thing I'll say is in the Palace game, something that I sort of had caught on to was the fact that even though Martin Ødegaard had a bad game and Saka didn't really create much and Emile Smith-Rowe didn't really do too much himself either. But one of the things that got me thinking of is what is the avenue? Where do you play the ball to Alexander Lacazette? You know, if you're looking at somebody like Andy Carroll, for example, it's pretty obvious. You hit it down to the wing, you put the ball across into the box and let him nod one in. If you're playing with someone like Gabriel Jesus or Jamie Vardy, put the ball in between the defenders and let him chase it. But Alexander Lacazette isn't an aerial threat in the box. Alexander Lacazette doesn't have the pace to beat defenders and split the lines. And then when you're talking about putting the ball into his feet, well, he's not overly physical either. And whilst he's been doing a slight job of that, I think teams are starting to figure it out. If you just stay tight to him, you completely nullify him, and that kills any lack of goal threat. So I think if anything, and I'm not going to sort of criticize too much hindsight 2020 and all of that, but when you look back at January, it's obviously a massive mistake not to bring in some form of striker, even if it had been a loan, for a plan B, if anything. You know, that Eddie Nketiah is, I'll just say it very bluntly, I think the guy's absolute trash. As a footballer, as a person, he might be a lovely guy, but he's just not a very good footballer. But the other thing I'll say is, as well, is that if you look back to the season we won the FA Cup when we moved to a back three, eventually teams in the league started to figure that out. And then eventually we changed to the formation, as you say, where Granit Xhaka was slipping into left back and Kieran Tierney was bombing on and putting in crosses. And that worked for a little while too. I'm starting to realise that every 6 or 7 weeks, every system starts to get figured out. People start to realise what other managers are doing, and then they counter that and nullify that with their own systems. So for me, it's maybe just that people are starting to realise that Alexander Lacazette is key to our attacking threat. And now it's just going to be as simple as stick a man on Lacazette, and that's him completely out of the game. So for me,
I agree.
For me, I think the fact that we have a team like Brighton who aren't doing very well, to put it lightly, at the minute, this is the time, if you're ever going to experiment at this stage of the season, the Brighton game is the time to do it. I think that Gabriel Martinelli has everything in his locker to be an absolute superstar striker. And I think it's maybe time just to take a roll of the dice, throw him in there, see how he does. If it isn't going too well, half time comes and you've got Lacazette on the bench, and by all accounts as well, Lacazette could potentially need to be taken out of the spotlight at the minute. I think I've seen a stat. I'm not sure whether it's 17 hours or 17 games that he hasn't scored from open play. So
in summary, you'd bench him.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Sorry.
Podcast. One-word answers would be very dull.
Yeah. It's a podcast with 2 Irishmen on there, so you're never going to get any silence on it. Never mind. Listen, Dan, anything to add on that? And finally, touching on that game, because I'm conscious that you want to go in a couple of minutes, but I do want to go on the Arteta Vieira thing. Any key players to keep an eye out on the Brighton side from your view, and add anything else on the Lacazette that you want?
Of course, listen, Brighton are a side that aren't winning at the moment, and they're a side that aren't scoring. So I don't expect to see a high-scoring game at the weekend. Now, having said that, it will probably be a 3-3 draw now. But it's one of those games that I do think will be very tight. I don't believe personally Brighton are a huge, huge threat at the weekend. It's a very bad omen for us going there because they've managed to do quite well against us over the years. But I will say that I think we're probably going to take 3 points. Just the pure fact we're playing them at a good side at a good time. They're not really playing for anything at the moment other than trying to win to get some of their pride back. Graham Potter's done an absolutely outstanding job, in my opinion. So they're going to be a threat, of course, because they're a good side on their day. Of course, Basuma's a massive player for them. Mopé, we all know we have history with, but I don't say that he's an exceptional talent. But they have got a couple of players that can hit us and can cause some damage. As for Lacazette, I'm with Owen 120,000,000%. It's time for Martinelli through the centre. Just played up front four, Smith Rowe, Ødegaard, Saka and Martinelli. Let's see what happens. It's full of pace. It's got creativity because Ødegaard can thread balls through. You might have to defend against us differently, but we'll certainly be able to attack teams differently. You can't play the high line because Lacazette ain't going to get off the shoulder because he ain't going to move. You have to with Martinelli because he is a pacey striker and he'll cause you all sorts of problems. And what I like about that front three or front four, if you include Ødegaard, is you've got the creativity and the technical ability from him. You've got the pace and the power from both Saka and Martinelli, and you've got the drive from Smith Rowe. And of course, you can play them in any position you want because there's a lot of rumours that Smith Rowe may go into the Lacazette type role if Lacazette isn't about because he can do that job just as good. The reason Lacazette isn't a target in the box is because he's never in the box. That's the reason. So it doesn't matter if he's 6'7", he's never in the box.
There's only one guy I saw slower than Lacazette running. Who was it? We were playing Martinelli was putting the ball in. No. Well, actually, no. It was Alex Iwobi for Everton the other day.
Oh,
Jesus Christ!
I was howling, man. And when they signed him for 40 million, I was howling, mate. Absolutely howling. But no. In seriousness to that question, I do think Lacazette it's time because I've seen enough of him now, and he doesn't even work hard and hold the ball up well anymore. He's not even doing that. And I wouldn't mind so much if Lacazette was 37 like Ronaldo, but he's like just turned 30 and he looks like he's 45. He's never lasts past 60 without blowing out of his arse. Like, what is happening?
He can do 70 minutes and then he is struggling and he does ask to be changed by 70 minutes, which is his fitness. But I disagree with you in the sense he does add a lot to the game. He does give a lot to the game. Against Palace, granted, he was poor, but I think that was Palace managing Arsenal rather than Arsenal managing the game.
He was poor against Villa as well, wasn't he? Really poor against Villa as well.
He wasn't great. No, he wasn't great. That's over. That's 2 weeks ago. Christ, you won't expect me to remember that long. You mentioned Graham Potter, a manager that everyone's been crowing and raving about and saying how good he is, an English manager, potential Tottenham or Arsenal, or linked to some of the bigger jobs. Vieira, after the performance he put in against Arsenal the other night, and also what you touched on earlier, he inherited a team with 7 players. He's bought players. He's instilled a bit of steel about Palace, and I didn't even notice, but you had a good point about Zaha's not moaning about moving. He did, in his own interview after the game, admit that he did inherit a well-organised squad, and that is Roy Hodgson, which he will, given time, he's not dynamic, but he does organise and set a squad up. Owen, given the choice, let's go back pre-December 2019. Vieira's never managed in the Premier League. Arteta's never managed in the Premier League. Graham Potter has had Brighton. Given a choice of one of those 3, Ancelotti, all of those, none of those are all available. They're your 3 managers. Who would you have chosen on the day? I know who I know who Dan has got, so that doesn't matter.
Well, maybe surprisingly, if you put me back at that time, Graham Potter's the choice I would have went for at that time. I think that was it Östersunds, or what do you call the side that they actually beat us? I mean, he did fantastic things with that with that side, and he had a bit of a track record. And if we're all being very honest, I know that it's the trendy thing to look at one of the Invincibles and say that they're the man to take the role. Patrick Vieira's managerial record at that time wasn't overly flattering, to be honest with you. I think that he had a bad spell in France, and obviously Mikel Arteta had no experience whatsoever. So I think that Graham Potter's the one I would have went for. But in saying that, I think if one thing I've learned from Mikel Arteta is that maybe sometimes it's bad to have a former player as your manager, because even though Mikel Arteta isn't a legend and he's not an invincible or held it anywhere near, I mean, Mikel Arteta couldn't clean Patrick Vieira's boots in terms of the legacy that he has as a player at Arsenal Football Club. But there is a connection. There is at times a bit more of a tendency for the fan base to cling on and be protective over a manager, maybe when they shouldn't be. And I think that if Mikel Arteta wasn't a past player for Arsenal Football Club, he's probably not in a job right now, because he wouldn't have made it through some of those more difficult periods, the Europa League exit at the start of the season. So yeah, for me, look, hindsight 2020 and all that there, like you say, Graham Potter's very good manager. Would I be pushing now to get Patrick Vieira in? No, I'd rather see him go down the right route. I don't want to see us do a Frank Lampard thing where we take a manager too early after a flash in the pan and commit too much to a player. I want to see somebody with a proven track record to succeed Mikel Arteta if he doesn't eventually succeed himself.
Very well said. Really, really well said. And to be honest, you talk about thinking of Patrick Vieira. I do think of Patrick Vieira as a legend, and I do think you're right that he's not fit to polish or lace Arteta's boots up. But when I think of Arteta, I don't ever think of him as an Arsenal player. I know he was captain and everything else. I always just think of him as an Everton player, and when he was at his best, in my view, when he was Everton captain. And I know when we signed him, I wasn't over the moon, but I wasn't displeased. But I was like, oh, wow, okay. But had we got him just past his best? I personally, I and myself and Dan have many debates on this. I am pro Arteta in the sense that I want to support him. I think he's doing a lot of good things with the club. I think he's the one that is the right person at this moment in time to rebuild the club. Whether he is the guy to take us beyond the top four if we get there. And I'm going to look at his comment in a second. He'll throw me off. Whether it's good enough to take us to challenge him for the league and the Champions League, I don't know. And who succeeds him is a different kettle of fish. Dan, I know your judgment on Arteta has been varied. It's improved from where it was a few months back. But go back prior to his appointment, we're lost Unai Emery, you got Graham Potter, you got Vieira, you got Arteta. Who would you have picked?
So I can't really disagree with anything that Owen said. I think he put that really well, really. I look at who is set up best out of those three individuals to have a proven track record to take us forward. And the only option is Graham Potter, because of what he's done at Ostersund's, because of what he'd done at Swansea, and then he obviously got the job at Brighton. That was why I believe he would have been a better choice than the other two. Now, I don't think any of them would have been my number one, of course. But out of those three options, I think the three of them I would have gone for would have been Graham Potter. Now, you talk about the comparisons with Vieira and Arteta, and a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people have spoken to me about it. I think it's really, really hard to compare the two. The reason I say that is because one of them's got a much bigger job than the other, because Arsenal, whether you like it or not, it's a bigger job. And the other one has only just started in the Premier League as a manager in Patrick Vieira. So you can compare who's had the better start. I think Vieira has had the better start out of the two. But if you look at who's the better manager and you take New York City and Nice into account from Patrick Vieira and Manchester City's assistant coach and the Arsenal Arteta, then I think it's very, very difficult to judge that, because they're different leagues. They're both starting at different times of their career. So I think it's very difficult to compare the two.
The two big learning curves as well. The expectation of what would have been expected of Patrick Vieira going into that job at Palace, or even Patrick Vieira going into the job at Arsenal, I think there'd be different pressures under him, which is what Owen talked about the invincible legend.
Lampard and Chelsea, yeah.
But the expectations of him going into the job, and opposed to the expectations of what people thought of Arteta going into the job, are poles apart. And if Graham Potter was appointed as an Arsenal manager, and I only put Potter in because you brought him up in the conversation, because I had this down just an Arteta-Vieira debate. But if you put Graham Potter into the Arsenal job in 2019, I don't think he would have lasted more than... I don't think he definitely wouldn't have lasted as long as Arteta has. I don't see him.
Why is that?
I don't see him doing this. I don't know. I think there's an element of
Is it because he's not the
Potter.
best looking Englishman you know?
No, he's had his hair cut and he's not on tonight.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I just don't think there'd be a tolerance one from the fan base because he wasn't an ex-Arsenal player, which it's just this conversation made me think some things. I don't.
Do you think, Fergus, it's maybe the fact that we needed an authoritarian, someone like Mikel Arteta, who's heavy-handed, and Graham Potter to me doesn't seem like that. He seems very alert tactically. He seems very good at drilling the side, but in terms of maybe coming into a dressing room with massive egos like Mikel Arteta did, we look at Mikel Arteta still had Mesut Ozil, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Would Graham Potter be fit to handle some of those egos?
You know what? I don't know, and I think probably because of Arteta's link to Wenger and Wenger's captain and a bit of a protege of Wenger. I think that links to the board and the culture of the club. I think also the board and the ownership of the club will probably come under a lot of pressure as well about not understanding the ethos of the club. And I think Arteta coming in and understanding the ethos of the club and then taking no crap from nobody and getting rid of Deadwood. And he's probably not doing it for the same money as some of the other people would do. I'm sure he's getting a good screw, but he's probably not doing it for the same money. He's doing a bit more to develop his career and for the love of the club to a certain degree. Not that I'm saying he's an Arsenal man through and through, but I don't know. I do think it was one hell of a gamble. And I do think it is probably a good gamble, in my view.
I think all we can do, because we don't know what it would have been like if Graham Potter was an Arsenal manager, all we can do is look at the evidence of what he's done in his career so far. And we can't really compare what he's done at Ostersons and Swansea, but you can look at what he's done at Brighton. And when you've got a team, and I know he's going through a dreadful patch at the moment, I don't think they've won in 6 now. He's managing to get a style of play. He's managing to get players like Mope and Danny Welbeck scoring goals. And Arteta was struggling to get Aubameyang and Lacazette to scoring goals. So I think style-wise, he certainly would have come in and I think given us a style of play, which I think Brighton had up until a few weeks that we've seen now. It's been a bit lackluster, and I think they've probably got a lot out of that side already, and they're going through their bad patch of the season because they were 5th at one stage in the league. So I think that he's a manager that I think would have been underwhelming to become the Arsenal manager, certainly, as well as probably Vieira and Arteta for me. I don't think anybody was overwhelmed when Arteta was appointed. I don't think anybody went, wow, we're on to good things. I think everybody was like, oh, bloody hell, we've got someone who's never done the job before. We all wanted an Antonio Conte or a Simeone. Well, I don't think everyone did, actually. I did. I don't think everybody did. And we got Arteta.
So I think they were
a little bit underwhelmed. A little bit underwhelmed, I think was fair to say. I mean, maybe you two were happy with Arteta. I don't know. Maybe you were. I wanted someone who'd actually done the job before. But maybe, this was the right way to go. We will find out, won't we? We'll find out.
We will. My thing that I like that we've done with Arteta, or, to be honest, anybody that we put in there, and I don't think Conte, Mourinho, any of the names that were out there would be willing to be in it for the long game and be there for 5 years and develop. And the whole club needs to rebuild. And look at Man United, 5 managers on, and they're still in a complete state. Mm-hmm. I didn't want that happening to Arsenal Football Club, and that's why by taking a chance on Mikel Arteta, which it is a huge chance on Mikel Arteta, by taking that chance and by what he's done, being the hard man and being the dictator and the disciplinarian and everything else, he's made those difficult choices that I don't know if a Mourinho would have got away with that, because the media would have just torn him up. With Arteta, it's a blank sheet. Owen?
Yeah, look, I think that what you mentioned earlier is absolutely spot on. I think that it's a net positive, exactly what Mikel Arteta has done. I think the difference is if you look at personalities, and I don't want to make this come across like I'm saying that Patrick Vieira is deficient in any way of this, but for me, if you look at a player like Mikel Arteta and a man like Mikel Arteta, one thing you have to say is that he's a very cultured person. He seems to have these ideals instilled in him that he really lives by, and I think that that's what we needed was was a cultural overhaul at this club. It had been spared him of money grabbers and merchants and people with their own self-interest at hand. And one thing he has done is he's come in and he's completely turned that around. If you look at something like the wage structure at this club in comparison to even 2 years ago, it's such a stark difference. And now, regardless of what you think about the manager, I think that if you want to look at what he's doing at the minute, we're in a top 4 fight that I don't think anybody else would expect, with a goalkeeper who got relegated twice and was laughed at when he signed for us, a Japanese right back who nobody had heard of, two centre backs, Ben White, who everybody was laughing at us when we paid 15 million for. We've got Granit Xhaka, the man who was never going to put the shirt on again and wanted to leave the club. He's got Martin Odegaard, a bench warmer. You know, you've got a French Darren Bent essentially playing up front for you, and then 2 baby faces out of the academy. You know, if you actually, once you pick it apart and pull it apart, the job that he's done, I think, is phenomenal. We're ahead of schedule at the minute, and don't let the fact that we're ahead of schedule discourage you from what this team can achieve with this manager, I think, as well. I've had my doubts. I've wanted him out at certain times, but that's just the life of a fan. That's why I'm sitting here talking to you two lads on a computer screen and not running Arsenal Football Club, because I'm a moron and that's not my job. There is people in position to make them decisions, and I'm glad that there is, because I think we could have pulled the trigger too early and maybe seen this guy succeed at someone like a PSG or a Barcelona or wherever you want, a Man City, whatever. I think that when you look at these last 10 games, it hurts. The Palace game hurts right now, definitely 100%. But I think if you had brought me an Arsenal fan in front of onto the screen now, or in person even, would be better. And if you had told you that we were going to go undefeated for the last 10 games of the season, I would have hit him a smack in the face and said, wise yourself up, because it's just unrealistic. We were always going to lose games. We're going to pick up points where we don't expect to pick up points, and other teams are going to drop points where we don't expect them to drop points. It's a long run into the end of the season. There's going to be ups and downs for everybody, but I think that regardless, granted, as long as there's no massive capitulation, I think that this team has done us proud this season and exceeded expectations of where we maybe expected to be.
Ben Bennett, who's been on the show on Twitter as well. He's in the WhatsApp group, and we've had a conversation, and he said, regardless of what this team achieves this season, whether they get top 4 or not, as all of us will be extremely disappointed if we don't, he's happy that the team have left everything on the pitch, which is fantastic. And to be honest, I think they have. I sent you a text this morning, Dan, and I've managed to secure Southampton tickets, but this season has been my best season ever for away fixtures. I've managed Brentford, Man City, Leicester, Leeds, Forest, Wolves, Watford, and I've got Chelsea, Southampton, and Tottenham coming up. Look, we're very conscious of time. Quickly looking at this, we've got Arsenal v Tottenham has been finally scheduled for the Thursday night, so it means that we got a long weekend. It's Thursday in the pub for about, well, I finished work at 5:15, so in the pub for about 5:16, and taking Friday off, and it's a nice long weekend. But that has meant that the Newcastle game has been moved to the Monday, and Leeds was moved to the Sunday. Looking at these fixtures, how many points can you see us getting out of there, please? How many points can you see Tottenham getting, please, Dan? They've got Villa, Brighton.
Tottenham, I think personally, Tottenham they only 3 games they could potentially drop points against are Liverpool, Leicester and Villa. I think they'll get a full house after that. I don't know why Tottenham have been thrown an extra game there by Blank FC. I mean, that's a bit unfair, isn't it? When do we get to play Blank? That's
to do with their trophy room.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah, no, like that, Ferg, like that. Arsenal, Brighton, 3 points. Southampton, 3 points. Chelsea, 0 points. Manchester United, 3 points. West Ham, 1 point. Leeds, 3 points. The Scum, 1 point. Newcastle, 3 points. And Everton, 3 points. So I think we'll drop more points than Tottenham, unfortunately.
Okay. I'd agree with you on most of your predictions, except for West Ham. I would have said maybe the one where we don't get any points, but I can see us getting some points at Chelsea. 1, I'm there, and 2, Chelsea at the Bridge are they can be got at, and they're currently 2-0 down against Real Madrid, which is not on in the background.
Who's the
Behind
Real Madrid manager, by the way?
Carlo
Who's the Real
Ancelotti,
Madrid manager? Who is it?
Ancelotti.
Oh, he's rubbish. He's washed up. Sorry, go on, carry on. Somebody I wanted, that's all. I was told he was washed up. He's winning the Liga and beating Chelsea 2-0 at Stamford Bridge. Washed up manager. Next.
Owen, you're moving swiftly on. What do you reckon on this one, Owen?
Our fixtures or the Spuds?
Yeah, who do you see getting better out of these then, I suppose?
To be honest with you, the fixtures are more favourable for them. I think Villa's a tough game for them. I think Brentford could potentially be tough. Leicester isn't an easy one either. Liverpool, they're going to get absolutely demolished by them. I expect us to beat Spurs because, look, let's face it, we can look at these fixtures and tot the points up all we want, but we all know it is the history of the Tottenham to absolutely bottle it when they get into these types of positions. So I expect nothing less than Tottenham just to absolutely fall apart, and I can't wait to see that dribbling goon, Harry Kane, weeping tears. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. No. Look, I think that even though those were points dropped the other night, that it's still in our hands, and I expect Tottenham to stumble like they always do.
I think points will be dropped by ourselves, Tottenham and United. My fear is, and I think it's going to be that tight, that goals will be very, very important. But listen, we follow the Arsenal. We haven't got any clips of the post-match podcast at 11 o'clock. In the
I'm
hotel,
surprised I'm still standing there, to be honest.
I'm just really entertained by how unfazed the chick behind you on her phone is. She's just like, shut up.
I know. Well, guys, thank you very much. Dan, I know you're jumping on to the podcast shortly, so thank you for your time, as always, and I'll see you Saturday. I'll see you Saturday.
Yeah.
I think it's a Tolly beforehand. I don't know if I'll...
probably will be, mate. If not, I'll see you in the concourse. For is it a 3 o'clock? Finally,
finally,
at 3 o'clock.
o'clock.
Oh wow, we've only had 4 of those this year.
We've got 2 in a row. We got 3 o'clock at home and 3 o'clock away.
Cannot wait. Although I'm really annoyed that Newcastle has been moved to a Monday. It's ruined the whole of my weekend. I can't get the Tuesday off work, so I'm screwed.
I'll tell you a quick story. So I had to move. I booked the hotel for the Sunday, and I was going to get a ticket by hook or by crook, whatever taxes I may or may not have to pay. I was going to get a ticket, and I cancelled the Monday, and I managed to get the Southampton tickets this morning through a contact of mine. And thank you very much. You know who you are. And my son-in-law, my daughter's partner, is coming over from Germany, and he said, "Oh, there's some football on that weekend. We can go." I said, "Hey, listen, it's Southampton away. You got 2 hopes. You're just not getting tickets at the moment for away games." I said, "I'll put some feelers out." I messaged him this morning. Southampton's all sorted. He said, "Oh, brilliant! I'll get you in return to say thank you on the 15th of May." The last home game for Dynamo Dresden, and it's a derby. And I don't know if you've seen, I didn't put the pictures up, but if you go on to it's on. I sent their ultras unreal, and I've been in the K Block before, and it's just unreal. They got capos and everything, and it's a great atmosphere. And I had the flights ready and booked 17 quid to fly to Dresden and back on the Saturday, back on the Tuesday. And I said to the wife, I said, "I'll book you a ticket as well. We'll go see our daughter as well." And she went, "Oh, I don't know if I can." I said, "Look, I'll just book it. It's 20 quid. Doesn't matter. I'll write it off." "Okay, just let me double check and check the diary." She checked the diary. She's got a hospital appointment that she's got to go to. And that's the reason I couldn't do the Newcastle one, because I could have got the Tuesday off. So I cancelled Newcastle. I now cancelled the Dynamo Dresden game, all on the back of that. So thank you, wife. Owen, thank you for joining us as always. Your compadre was in the chat. He's obviously really, really, really enjoying this. He says there's a hell of a panel, except for Fergus, Owen and Potsy. And he's at Stamford Bridge. He's clearly enjoying the game because he's watching this podcast instead. Oh, and
Pleasure as always. Pleasure as always, lads. The only person I feel sorry for is Mike's son Jake having to babysit an overgrown 59-year-old dude. So sorry, Jake. No, pleasure as always, boys.
No worries. Well, at least you got to see Super Kevin Campbell, and it was all over Twitter on that one. So, guys, you have been watching Guns and Yellow Ribbons, an Arsenal podcast by Arsenal fans for Arsenal fans. If you like what we do, I know there wasn't been a huge number in viewing us live today, but if you like what we do, you can pick up our audio on all platforms, and we're on YouTube as well. Click the like button. Let your mates know. We're not a big commercial one. We're just by Arsenal fans for Arsenal fans, as the title says, and we really enjoy doing it. Up the Arsenal.
You've been listening to Guns and Yellow Ribbons, an Arsenal podcast by Arsenal fans for Arsenal fans. Follow us on Facebook at Guns and Yellow Ribbons and Twitter at Guns and Ribbons. And remember to rate and review us too.